Did you know one of the world's workplace fatalities, the worst in Ontario's history, happened in nearby Dresden? Well, in 1957, 6 people died when the well they were digging along the Sydenham River collapsed. As Michelle Maluske reports, a historian and filmmaker is now making a documentary about it because of his close personal connection to the tragedy.
August 14th, 1957.
We were immigrants.
This is the chilling trailer for a new documentary about the death of 6 migrant workers in Dresden. Eric Philpott's father was an engineer on the project.
This was just like a family story for me, like I couldn't find anything when I Googled for it. But then we found his diary, photos, like a lot of documentation.
Philpott figured if he didn't know the whole story, the community likely didn't either.
What if I hadn't found my father's diary? I would never know about this. What if nobody ever thought to just tell the story?
He's now righting that wrong, starting with interviews with the victims' families.
She said, why don't you just call it sick? It's too dangerous. Don't go.
If something happens, you have John. Those are the last words that I remember my dad saying.
He was down below somewhere when the whole thing collapsed.
The crew of Dutch workers were digging a pit 35 feet below water level to bring a water treatment plant to Dresden.
They were pouring the last load of concrete, and that's when it collapsed. So one side of the pit collapsed and buried the 5 workers in the pit, and the foreman who was talking to the contractor on the edges of the pit. The foreman fell in or was thrown in by the force of the cave-in, and he too died.
He kept saying, it was all my fault, it was all my fault.
As if the tragedy wasn't enough for the families and the community, Philpott says the secondary tragedy is how quickly this story was forgotten.
People just wanted to get on with life and didn't want to hear bad things in the 50s.
Many of the children of these men are still alive, but they're in their 70s and 80s and even 90s, right? So this is our last possible moment to actually tell this story from the people who experienced it.
Philpott hopes to finish shooting the film this fall and have the finished documentary ready sometime next year.
The intensity of this tragedy, and it's not just for the people who lived it, and that's powerful enough, it goes on down the generations. So, yeah, I would say this is personal now on all levels for me, both family, my own father, and, the people that I now feel very obligated to make sure that this story is told.
In Dresden, Michelle Maluske, CTV News.